the digital airways of Stereophonic, we're proud to introduce you to the members of a very special community. Those in the spotlight and behind the scenes, the people and the personalities who make the music happen. We're proud to continue with our mission to entertain and inform you as we reveal tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. She's a songwriter, a producer, a vocal producer, an arranger, an engineer, and certainly a musical force of nature. The artistry of Alana Da Fonseca is imprinted across a multitude of musical mediums, including feature films and television series. She's written an astonishing number of songs for sync that, joined with her expert productions, amplify all manner of modern media. I'm Dan Kimbell with Alana Da Fonseca on Stereophonic. Thanks for making time for us.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
You do so many things, and you are so busy.
I'm busy.
It's just a miracle to have you alone here with us.
It's true. And I actually love being alone because if I'm not alone, my 2-year-old daughter is actually clinging to me like a barnacle. So thank you for having me, truly.
Thank you for driving over. Some modern stuff happening right now. It looks like we're going to be able to see Primos.
Yes.
Starting July 25th on the Disney Channel.
Yeah.
And that is great. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that show. It was, I demoed for that show. I think they probably went pretty wide for the pilot episode. And this was before it was even greenlit. And I wrote a song that was kind of English and Spanish, that the lyrics had already been written by the writer of the show, Natasha Klein, who's amazing. And she had written these lyrics, and I kind of had to, like, it's complicated to work around lyrics that are written by somebody who's, not that kind of writer, not a lyrical writer, but she did a really good job. And I got into the finals, and then I won the show, and it was so fun. And they were like, okay, so do you want to maybe like demo for the, what's it called? Oh yeah, the main title song. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And then they were like, cool, we're going to set up a kickoff Zoom for it, next week on Monday or something. I was like, okay, cool. I get to the Zoom, and I had already written the song. And there were no changes. Like if there was a change, it was like a slight lyrical tweak because, it was one of those things that the show's creator and I were just like in alignment from the beginning. So it was the smoothest, I've never had an experience like that where it was just like out of the gate, we're like, oh yeah, that? Okay, great. Like this? Yeah. Great. Wonderful. Like that? Yes. Great. Everything was just like, poof, approved, next. So it was, truly one of the best experiences I've had in that sense. I've definitely worked on shows before where like it's taken a while for us to get our bearings in the beginning, like, a few episodes in, and we're still doing like several revisions on stuff to try and get our sound right. Primos was wonderful, and being able to write also in English and Spanish was so fun, and be able to write for that audience. And the cast was so amazing. They all came, they brought it. Like from the ones who were like, oh, we're not really singers, to the ones who were incredible singers. In fact, one of the actresses from the show, this girl, Elizabeth Grullon, who likes to sing, but, doesn't really record very frequently and has a beautiful voice. When I recorded her moment, I was like, oh God, we need to do way more of this. Her voice carries so much sincerity and weight. And when I'm giving her notes, I can see her digesting them and then like embodying them. So when it came time to do an end title song for the episodes that ended on a more forlorn note, I knew she had to sing it. So I wrote this song, and it was really kind of cool, and I brought her in to sing it, and everybody in the studio cried because she just brings it. Like, yeah, I need to do a record with her now. I'm like obsessed with her. But anyway, so yeah, excited to see that show. I think it's going to speak to a lot of different people. I have several friends who were born and raised here from the Latino communities, and they're like, I feel like they're really going to feel reflected in it because not only are the actors all Latino, a lot of the people who worked on the show also in the colorist department, like the guy who did all of the background painting and color for the show, grew up here too. So he's Latino and he like totally understands the feeling. So it's just it was a really cool crew to work with. Everybody's like really great and the cast was awesome to work with.
I'm interested in some of the language you use when you describe the process of getting that gig. And you said I was in the finals and I won.
Yeah.
It would seem to me, given your reputation, that people would hire you kind of like because of this ridiculous list of credits that you have. But you still have to go through that, huh?
Sometimes, yeah. So it depends. Like for some things, I just get called. So for the 2 films that I'm working on right now, I just got called to do them. I can't remember Wednesday. What happened on Wednesday? Oh, yeah, I just got called to do Wednesday. But for the animated series, I still have to demo like everyone else because I think part of and I still lose some of them too because, you know, they know I can write songs, but can I capture the feeling of the show that they're going for? Well, first of all, like I probably could, but just like, you know, at a certain, you know, you have to be able to have that dialogue. Something that I might send in might not really be hitting the mark. But if it were a different process, I'm like pretty sure I could satisfy like most of the needs. Cause like, you know, not only do I love all different kinds of music and I feel like I've been exposed to and obsessed with all different kinds of music throughout my life, but I also like know who to bring in to collaborate with to create the best environment to make sure that we can satisfy those things. Yeah.
Cool. I try to be environmentally conscious as we do. You see, we have ensued the bottled water in studio. We're drinking out of these eco glasses today. However, I think I killed a huge tree when I printed out your credits.
Oh my God.
Because it just kept rolling and rolling and
no.
rolling, and my printer was like gasping for air. So every bio I've ever read of you over sequentially like gives a different number. She's written over 300 songs. She's written over 600 songs. She's written over 700 songs. She's written 1,000 songs. Closer to 1,000 songs that you've had.
Yeah, over 1,000.
Wow.
But, you know, I think that's what happens is like I don't update them. I don't update my bios. So I'm just like, well, what's the number now? And I just go to my BMI. And then I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't register song. I like never register anything. I actually feel like if I paid more attention to things, my life would be a little bit different. I can't do it. I'm like, I have a certain capacity for stuff, potentially, that's
a word. New one.
That's a new one. Because I have ADHD. So I'm like, I have a bandwidth. Let me not look at any of these. Like, on none of the administrative details can I even like be bothered with. It's terrible. Like, and also everything has to be on auto pay or I don't pay it. Yeah. Literally everything. My mortgage, my bank called me and they were like, I was like, did I miss a payment? Sorry, gotta go. Like they weren't talking fast enough, but like I knew why they were calling me. So I was like, okay, I'll pay it now. Bye. Yeah, no, it's terrible.
You mentioned Wednesday. I wanted to Paint It Black.
Yeah.
That was the Grammy nominated version with the cello. That insanely, Paint It Black is such a weird song anyhow. It's such a spooky, dark thing, you know, and I mean, it was Jagger and Richards, obviously, but I mean, you know, Brian Jones was still in the Stones at that point in time. He had a lot of world music influences.
Oh, yeah, you can hear that.
You hear that in that particular song. How did you decide to do it as a cello piece?
So that came down from the music supervisor. I don't even know who picked the song. Probably the showrunners, Miles and Al, picked the song. I'm not even sure. And then Jen Malone, the music supervisor, was like, make this cello-y. And by the way, I think I got the show because of my acapella background, which by the way is like not a real thing. I'll tell you more about that in a moment, but I do not have an acapella background. But what happened was, okay, I'm going to go back so we can go forward, is that I was working at a studio where we were recording Tom Kitt, the arranger. He does a lot of Broadway. He does a lot of film and TV work as well. And I was the engineer. And at the time, I was also producing and writing songs for film and TV. But I was there to help record and produce his vocal demos for Pitch Perfect 1. And the music supervisors on the show, Julia Michaels and Julianne Jordan, at one point were like, can you do a cappella arrangements? And I was like, yeah. I mean, like I had done some arranging for the Chipmunks, and there's 3 of them, and they sing songs without instrumental music sometimes. So I was like, yeah, I'd do that. Okay, sure, fine. Little did I know it's like a whole culture, and there is like really cool some of the things that they do. But I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And what I basically did was for the first film, I listened to the songs that I was supposed to be arranging, and I basically copied the arrangement, the pop arrangement, and put it into voices. And that worked really well. It was a very different sound, and that was kind of my style. And so when it came down to the Bella's finale number, they wanted the end to be, I'm going to put this in heavy quotation marks, cooler. So I did like kind of a pop arrangement for the ending, which was kind of dubsteppy because I was cool at the time. And that was how I first got started with Pitch Perfect. And what ended up being really cool was collaborating with Ed Boyer and Deke Sharon, the other 2 vocal arrangers who are really entrenched in the acapella world. I mean, like they wrote Deke wrote the book on it, and they're both really amazing. So like bringing my perspective and meeting their perspective ended up being really a fun blend for 2 and 3. And yeah, so because of all of that, people think I do a cappella work, and they hired me for Wednesday because of the couple of a cappella numbers that were in there, because there was a group, the Scales, they do a cappella. They are an a cappella group as well. So they're like, can you do cello arrangements? Similarly to Pitch Perfect, I was like, yeah. And so for Paint It Black, I did a piano sketch of what I wanted it to be. Because when they said, oh, Paint It Black, and I'm hearing the melody and I'm knowing they're going to want it to feel up-tempo and angsty, I was like, I instantly heard it as that arpeggiated figure. And so I did the arrangement on piano, and I sent it to one of my colleagues, Essen Aiden goes to put it into a cello, and she came up with a couple of really cool ideas as well. Suggested Bartok Pizzicato. She did a couple of cool runs in there. And then it was actually supposed to live in the scene as a solo cello moment. And in the 11th hour, literally, I think it was like the night before they were recording the orchestra, Tim Burton was like, Chris Bacon, we need orchestra around this. And Chris scored around it that night and recorded it the next day. And they sent it to me. I didn't know. They were like, oh yeah, we put orchestra around it. They sent it to me. I literally threw my phone across the room when I was hearing it, because I was like, this is so good. And then it had the path that it had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you have to be sensitive because you work with a lot of celebrity situations, and we've talked about beauty pass and different kinds of things. But you did reference, and you work with some artists that have quite a reputation. They've been around for a really long time, and the word has always been that they party like animals. I'm talking about Alvin and the Chipmunks, of course.
Yeah.
So from the 50s, Alvin and the Chipmunks, right? Russ Bagdasian, a.k.a. David Seville, and the Chipmunks. What longevity that band has.
I know.
They're like better than the Rolling Stones.
They actually, it's funny. They really have staying power, and they really know how to evolve with the times. Yeah, it's a really fun project to work on because it's something that kids always seem to really like. I loved it in the 80s because there was the cartoon spinoff in the 80s. That Ross Bagdasarian Jr., and I don't know if he's a junior or like there's something else going on, but he's he's in charge of the ship now with his wife Janice Carmen, who also they did the voices, they wrote the script, they did the whole thing in the 80s. And they've just been like a fun, ride to be on as well, because it's true. I don't know what it is about them, but the kids love them. They never stop loving them either. I'm like, what is it? I think it's the voices. And it's funny because whenever I'm doing anything where I have to do children's voices, I use kind of similar technique to the technique that I use for recording the chipmunk voices, which is it's, it's like very speed. It's like you
Yeah.
slow it down a little bit to speed it up, and then it sounds younger. It's just that chipmunks is like an extreme version of that.
Writing songs for animation or for animated characters to perform, is it different when it's animated characters as opposed to humans?
I mean, no. I make adjustments based on the demographic. So if it's a preschool show for little kids and it's supposed to be educational, social, emotional, I did a song for Madagascar, A Little Wild, that just meant to guide somebody through a panic attack, about like breathing and like just recognize your surroundings and like and then meanwhile there's stuff with Julie and the Phantoms. These are kids who are early in their high school careers and they're having feelings for each other, and then it's just a different headspace. But I think that it's something that we're all kind of familiar with if we can recall our childhoods, which I think a lot of people block out. I don't know.
I've had writers that work in that medium tell me they don't write down.
I don't write down. It's the feel, I don't dumb down the production ever. And it's not dumbing down the lyrics, but you have to, at a certain point, simplify. Like, I've definitely been in situations before where I'm using more sophisticated words. And I've had showrunners and writers tell me, like, oh, like, that's... I'm like, they'll look at... Like, they'll ask their parents if they want to know what the word is. I think it's a really good opportunity to teach vocabulary, but I'm alone in that. But anyway.
You were talking about music supervisors, you're talking about showrunners.
Yeah.
I mean, who primarily do you interact with?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. It super depends. Like, sometimes it's me and the director comes to my house or studio, and they're like... figuring things out with me touching my computer screen. And sometimes it's like through the most circuitous, like I'll be talking to a supervisor who's in communication with a choreographer and they're not talking to the director yet, and then they like it and then they don't like it, and then it comes back through the chain of... I'm like, if I could just talk to the person who's going to say yes or no, that would help. But that's not always the situation. And it's fine. Like, I don't really care as long as it makes sense. Because what I don't like to do is put a lot of effort into something that ends up being great, but just not what's being called for.
We'll be right back after this. This season of Storyophonic is sponsored by Novation, creators of the iconic Launchpad and LaunchKey MIDI controllers. Novation's creative instruments allow you to translate ideas into reality, channeling your artistic energy to create new music. Novation seeks to inspire. My exterminator came this morning to my house, and he has 2 kids, and I was working on prepping all this fabulous interview today. And so I said, are your kids watching the Trolls movies? And he said, oh, yeah. He was very impressed that we're doing this thing today, because your involvement in that particular, I hate to use the word franchise, but,
No, it's a franchise. I think they call it that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Troll Land there.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Trollstopia.
Trollstopia, that's right, exactly.
After the first film... this also everything comes back to Pitch Perfect. After the first film, when they were going to do a series, again, I demoed for the series. I think Jess and I even wrote the first song together that I was, oh my God, it was actually really funny. I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it. I didn't really feel like demoing for it. Like, on the day, Jess and I were doing other stuff, and I was like, I have to do this thing. It's due today. And when we write together, it is the most hilarious thing. Like, I am in my headphones, and she's in her headphones, and she's like writing the verse, and I'm writing the chorus. She'll write the pre, and I'm writing the bridge. We're doing it simultaneously. I got it. And they were like tracking it, and they were like done. And I'd say it was a pretty quick one. So then, I made it into the next round. I did the revisions, and then they called me in to have a meeting, and I thought I was going to go in and meet 2 people, the music team. At the time, it was Alex Nixon and Frank Garcia. And I get there, and I'm 10 minutes early because I like to be early. And they were like, they're waiting for you. And I was like, what? And I was coming from like actually like working out or something. Like that's not a thing I do anymore, but like when I had one child, I did. And there was like a hole in my shirt. I was wearing a bow headband. I looked ridiculous. And I walk into this boardroom where literally like there were so many people inside. There were two people named Frank. There was like it was like all of the writers, the executive producers, the like showrunners, like everybody was sitting around this conference table. And I had pink hair at the time too. Like I was just like, and I was like, oh, hey, everyone. And sat down and they showed me something, I don't know, some piece of animation. They asked for some additional changes. And then they were kind of like, this is your gig if you want it. And I was like, oh, cool. So I made the changes and then went on to write all the songs for that series, which was Trolls The Beat Goes On, and then the one that followed it, which was Trollstopia, which was really fun. That was still to this day like one of the most fun shows to write for because it was, you had the funk trolls, the pop trolls, the classical trolls, the country trolls. Am I missing somebody? Funk, pop, classical trolls? Yeah, I'm missing one. Who is it? I don't know. But the rock trolls.
The rock trolls.
So getting to write in all those genres, like I said before, like I love a lot of different genres. Like in my lifetime, I played in a punk band. I've been in hip hop groups. I have like literally grew up in jazz, Brazilian jazz. So I did opera in college a little bit, you know. So, you know, I mean, I feel like I hit all those marks and I was just like, oh, yes, let's go. So that was fun.
Talking about fun, something I came across I really like a lot from Palm Royale. He's a rebel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was weird. That was like a little bit of a weird. So we were talking about authenticity before, and had I known that this was going to go this way, I would have probably like suggested something else. But it's actually really funny. So anyway, it was Bad Times at the El Royale, and it was a show that Harvey Mason Jr. called me up and was like, "Oh, can you do the vocal arrangement for this song?" And I was like, sure. I think it was like a few vocal arrangements to do the background. So I did the arrangement and I sang it, and then they re-recorded the background parts. And I think they also re-recorded a lead singer. But then they ended up leaving my demo vocal in. And if you listen to the soundtrack and you listen to that song all the way through, the last minute of it is quite ridiculous because I started like squealing. I mean, because the vamp was like comically long to me. And so I was like, the song was done. I start like getting higher and higher, like riffing higher and higher until it's like squeaking like a mouse. And then I shouted out their engineer at the very end of it because I thought it would be funny. And I was like, this one's for you, Andrew. And I was like, you know, protect your ears. And they left that in. That's on the soundtrack. Like, I don't even know if they know that that was a joke, and because I was making fun of how long the vamp was. But, yeah, so check that out. That's a ridiculous thing. But that was a fun thing to do. For me, when I'm casting vocalists to do something, I like to be authentic to the ethnicity of the actor that's playing the character. So, you know, it's not my proudest moment being the voice behind a Black woman. Like, that should have been a Black artist, but also at the time, you know, they didn't know what was going on. I think part of the thing is like she wasn't supposed to be that good. So they just wanted to leave mine in. So whoever they probably hired probably sounded too good. I don't know. Or they just got used to the sound of my voice in there.
The song's got such a weird background historically. I mean, originally it was supposed to be recorded by Vicky Carr. It was recorded by the Blossoms, but they changed the name to the Crystals because Phil Spector, it was all Gene Pitney wrote it. We don't even think of Gene Pitney as a songwriter. We think of him as a recording artist. The song has such a weird thing to it anyhow.
It's a weird song.
It is a weird song, but it's a great
I love it.
I love it. You do so many different things, so I have so many different kinds of questions for you. You've got a good handle kind of on old-time rock and roll.
Oh.
You know, old-time pop music. And we got to hear a little bit of that on a song called Rise Again. Oh, commercial.
Yeah.
I came across that, which is very cool.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I wrote that with Bobby Studley, who actually is my collaborator on Primos also. And it was such an interesting moment. It was like during the pandemic, and I got a call, I think from Jerry Crenage, who at the time was at BBDO? No, I don't remember. No, McGarry Bond. Was that it? I have no idea what was going on. I don't know. It's all a blur. And the gig was to write a song for King Arthur Flower about just like survive. Like not just surviving, but kind of more thriving. A lot of people during the pandemic turned to baking, and I wanted to use rise, but not in a corny way. But there's that double meaning of, your bread's right, your dough's rising, your bread's rising in the oven, and like just like the joy, the simple pleasure that really gives people. So we will rise again. It was the double meaning, right, to these simple pleasures, and also just hopefully humanity rises again after what's befalling us. So, but that was a really fun one to do. And this singer, Ashley Nguyen DeWitt, who I met on Trolls, which I got from Pitch Perfect because Alex Nixon called Angela Reyes. Ashley was actually working as a coordinator on the show, and now she's awesome. She does voice directing on other shows. I had heard her voice on her Instagram, and I'm like, what are you doing? Why do you sound like that? You're so good. And I instantly knew that she needed to say it. Her voice sounds vintage just coming out of her face. Like, she's so talented, and I really want to make more songs with her, like in that. And she looks, she's just like awesome. I love her.
I work in the music education space some, and I work at a college where there's a lot of international students. And I always explain when we have Brazilian students come in, I always sit them down and say, you understand we expect a little more from you because of our history with Brazilian musicians.
Yeah.
In prepping this, of course, I've been listening to some Brazilian music, and I have been listening to Alana Da Fonseca.
Yeah.
It's your father. I've
My
been listening to your
dad.
dad. Your dad has a song that he wrote in your honor. It's in 15/8 meter. It goes to 6/8 to a double time 4/4 for a solo, and then back to 15/8. And it says allegedly, is that your personality?
I would say that's pretty reflective. That's definitely reflective of his experience of
Yeah.
me, but like somebody who like I vibe with like in a more stable way, I would say would not understand that. But yeah, no, my dad has definitely, I put him through it.
I saw reference to your dad being self-taught. Is that correct?
Probably. I was actually just telling this to somebody the other day at that record session where I was recording these amazing Asian singers for our Asian family in Oh What Fun. My dad, so the engineer of that session was kind of like, well, I don't really like read music. And I'm like, I don't read music. I do not. Like, I know how to read notes off a page, but like, I cannot read with any type of fluency. Like, if I'm going to transcribe something, it's going to take me 7 days. Like, really? No. And I was like, that's not really it. That's not where it really necessarily needs to come from. And I was like, you need to just do your thing. Because like, there are several publications that refer to my father as a living legend, the best of all time, and I'm like, he doesn't read a note. If somebody wants to play with him, they will make a recording of the arrangement and send it to him, and he will learn it off of that, and he will play. And guess what? Nobody else is going to play like he does.
Yeah.
I have not heard another Brazilian drummer who plays with the same feel or swing. There's others that I really like and admire, but their feel, to me, feels like a little bit more rigid. Like he is really the most, I don't want to say like relaxed. It's because the relaxed is not the right word, but it's just like the pocket is so good. It's like one of those like velvet lined pockets. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I really am enjoying listening to him. I like that style of music, certainly. And
yeah, he's great.
very, very great. I've interviewed some artists and have children, and they have not necessarily encouraged their children to go into the music business because it's a very, very difficult business for a lot of people. It doesn't sound like he had any choice though with you.
No,
Right?
I think it's really, it's kind of complicated because my parents, like, I think It's so hard, right? Because what do you want for your children, right? I want my children to feel um, self-actualized. I want them to feel like they are doing the thing that they want to do. If that changes, so be it. If it takes them down an uncomfortable path, so be it. I'd rather them be temporarily uncomfortable in pursuit of what will satisfy their soul, than be locked into something for practical reasons. Because you can always just go to Thailand and just live on a beach,
Yeah.
I think the game that we're playing here with industry and economy is like a little weird and twisted, but so it's important to like continually travel to get like a perspective shift. But yeah, I mean, I think that for me, my mom, encouraged me to go to school for liberal arts initially because, but I went to SUNY Purchase where they have a great program because I was drawn to the program, and I kind of dabbled in my sophomore year. I was still in for liberal arts and I was taking a bunch of music courses, production and songwriting. And the head of the department at the time was Joe Ferry, and he was like, "What are you doing? Like, just audition."
Yeah.
And I was like, ah, and I cried for like a day. But one of my friends who was an opera major was like, this is what you're doing. Just do it, because I was trapped in the perspective and the, like, I guess, American perspective of like, you have to do something practical. You have to like be successful. And I just don't like to really believe that, I think you need to do what you love to do, and I try to encourage that in my child. Like, my son is 10. He loves video games. I'm like, if you love video games, and you genuinely love them, let's do coding. Go to a STEM school.
Yeah.
Like, let's figure out how that can. I know somebody who works in video games, and he's extremely successful. You can do whatever you want to do, but you have to be dedicated. You have to put the work in. But guess what? The work feels like play when it's what you want to do. So, all that being said, I switched to production in my junior year, and because I wanted to still complete in 4 years, I was doing 40 credit hours and also blocking out all of the studio time. Like, I had classmates calling me like, "Alana, like, can I just get 3 hours on Monday?" Because I would get there like early and just like fill out because I was doing, for example, music theory 1 and 3 at the same time and 2 and 4 at the same time so that I could just get through it. And I graduated on time. It was cool.
We'll be right back after this. This season of Stereophonic is sponsored by Isotope, making innovative products that inspire and enable people to be creative using AI-powered tools for mixing, mastering, audio repair, and more. And by Odyssey, the leaders in planar magnetic technology. Odyssey delivers the best headphones money can buy. Odyssey is uncompromised audio. So you were a recording engineer.
Yeah, that was my first job after college, was recording engineer.
I saw a credit. You had worked on Warrior.
Oh,
like
yeah.
with Kesha.
Yeah.
Wow.
The song Timber. I
Yeah.
did the vocal record for her.
Timber.
Yeah. Big
Wow.
song. I actually met her way before that. She had come into my studio to record something. And this was when she was like not wearing shoes at all. And she was doing more of like a grunge style. This was in like the early 2000s, like before 2010. Wow. And so then when we met again, I like don't even remember what that was about. And then we met again around the time of Timber. I think I like did a few recording sessions for her, and she was great. Sings great.
Yeah.
Like that part is hard to sing, the yodel part, and she just like nailed it. So I was like, yes, girl. So that was a fun little period of time where I was doing a lot of vocal engineering and production for top 40 artists, and that was fun. I had fun.
Your personality is not what we usually see with engineers. Yes. We were talking about engineers earlier today, like, because we know a lot of engineers, and sometimes there's a personality, but it's not your personality,
No. I think that's like, in my experience has been refreshing to people because, particularly working with artists and vocalists, like, I'll like I know how to track a band and mic a drum kit, but that's not really what I'm usually being hired to do. I'm usually being hired to do vocal engineering. And because of my background singing and also the way that I interface with technology, It's a pretty unique experience because I'm also usually vocal producing at the same time as I'm engineering. And I can sense what a singer needs in terms of like breaks or continual flow. And I remember one time I was recording B.O.B. And the way that he was writing and the way that we were recording was he would freestyle a couple of bars and then he would kind of listen back to it, write the lyrics to it immediately. I would record him on those couple of bars and then keep it rolling for a couple more bars. He would listen back to it, immediately write the lyrics. I would give him a bar of pre-roll, let him record those bars. But the way we got into a flow with each other, there was no speaking. And I remember everybody in the studio like looking over my shoulders like, what is happening right now? Because it was just this like understanding that this is what he needed and he didn't want a lot of space, and he was like writing at this ferocious it was like so impressive the way he was doing it. So for me, time is very stressful when you're in the booth and you want to record a thing in that moment. You need the right amount of pre-roll and you need the right amount of space before and after you record it, and that space is small. Like, it's not a lot. Like, if you're in that zone where it's like you're ready to record that line, like that engineer better be on it, and it shouldn't be too much pre-roll. You know what I mean? So that's something that I like to like feel out with it, and usually I'm feeling that out like very quickly. Like, how much pre-roll does this person want or need? Sometimes somebody wants more. There's sometimes where I'm working with an artist and they need more pre-roll to get into it, and that's something that we discover pretty early on. You know, within the first 10 minutes of recording, maybe less, of like, what's the flow going to be? What's the feel going to be? And everybody has their own flow. It's like tapping into that artist's energy. So, and I love to do that. And I do that now a lot with actors. So I work a lot recording cast vocals for stuff, which is an interesting experience in and of itself because some of these people aren't singers. They say they're not singers. Like, I've worked with people who have great voices. We're like Chris Evans. I recorded him for something and he, you know, was like, I don't really sing. And I was like, you're singing today, baby. Let's go. And he sang. He really sang like high notes that he didn't think he had in his register. And that's another thing. Like, I've worked on shows before where like the music director is like, okay, this is their range. You know, we have to drop this song 2 semitones. We have to drop this. We have to, you know, and I'm like, I was like, I don't really think we're going to drop it. And we don't have to drop it. I'll get whatever notes out of whoever I need to get the notes out of. Because the thing is, there's a way. And people don't know their range, you know, particularly for recording. I think people, I remember recording with this one artist one time who's like, oh, brilliant singer. Oh my God, I love him. And he was like, is that a B flat? I was like, I'm not telling you what note that is. Mm-hmm. Stop. We're singing the note. I don't care what you think your range is. And he sang the note. And that, I've never had that not work. Okay? Like, the only thing is low. If something's too low, we need to raise it. Nothing's ever too high. People need to stop thinking that.
Really?
Really.
You can get that note?
Whatever note.
Even if you're a chipmunk?
Especially if you're a chipmunk.
I've interviewed also a number of women songwriters who do vocal production and don't always get credited for doing it,
Yeah.
but that's part of what they do.
Yeah.
And so we've had that conversation a
Yeah,
couple times.
people, they got to ask for credits. I mean, like, I think it made it easy for me on these records because I was only involved in the capacity of vocal production or engineering.
So there was no doubt what you were doing in the room.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have to use a lot of psychology on people in those situations, or?
Yes.
I think
I mean, I cannot tell you how many sessions, particularly with female artists, there have been tears in.
Yeah.
And a huge part of it is, I don't know how to, well, I guess I'll just say this. I don't want it to sound good. I want it to feel good. So I would prefer, I work with this one artist right now who is literally one of the best. She has such a facility with her voice. I mean, I think this is the same type of thing that Christina Aguilera kind of struggled with until Linda Perry, which was like, she can sing perfect.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And this girl is like that. She comes from R&B royalty lineage. Like her parents are both professional musicians, and she is perfect. She literally can sing, and like she's just amazing. And we were recording her single that she just released, and she was singing this part at the end, in this like light, floaty, airy, beautiful head voice. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are we saying here? What does this mean? And what are you saying at this point in the song? And how do you feel? Like, what are we doing here? And I was like, you're belting this. But I did it less mean. Because I'm trying to get to the emotion of something. Because if you're not tapped into that, you might as well just go home. Because otherwise, what are you doing? It has to have, once again, with feeling. And she sang this thing that is literally heartbreaking. She nailed it. Yeah.
I saw a little clip that you did for the Recording Academy, and very briefly, you touched on vulnerability, and that's what you're talking about now,
Yeah.
is the ability for artists, certainly on a certain level, to really be able to tap the darker side, to go to that for the sound.
Yeah.
But it's something interesting because you don't necessarily, if you were coming from the outside world, you wouldn't necessarily know that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because the world of professional music seems harder than that. It doesn't seem like it's built on those kinds of emotions.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can tell when it is and when it's not. Some people are really good at faking it, but like the stuff that's like pulling at your heartstrings, you can know that there's almost all the time there's heart behind it. I think that you can tell when people are performing from a genuine place. And I think like that's kind of goes back to what I was saying before about your ability to write or read music or being classically trained, or I think that there's value in all of that. There is a lot of value in all of that because there's the emotive side and then there's the intellectual side. And I usually use both, right? Because I think that particularly in storytelling, like for a lot of the series writing, I'm moving a story along. So I'm either getting from point A to point C or D, or I am giving details that the writers aren't necessarily giving for these characters and these moments, like what they're going through emotionally, sort of spelling that out. So I think that that's where the sort of more intellectual side comes into play, sort of being like, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this musically? How's it going to not be corny? Like, but, So, yeah, emotion's important.
Alana, you are truly fascinating. The information you've given us today are things that we have never heard in a Storyophonic episode before. We are getting all new information, and it gives us so much to think about and so much to concentrate, and again, so much respect for you and everything you do. And we thank you for being our guest on Storyophonic.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Storyophonic. Our shows are recorded, produced, and mixed by Lindsay Tomasik. Kim Strand is our production director. Our theme song is by Daddle Light Mine. Give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Subscribe to us on YouTube. I'm Dan Kimpel on Storyophonic.